Welcome to Yvonne Meets Food, where I share my passion for making food, eating food, as well as traveling the world to discover even more delicious food. This episode is going to be a little bit different in that we're not going to be cooking or traveling to a spot to eat, but instead this is going to be my ode to New York City, my adopted home, my love. Fascination with New York started in the mid-90s. My aunt was living in Boston at the time. She visited New York City and sent me a postcard that showcased the Empire State Building and the amazing New York skyline. And I just thought to myself, oh my God, I am definitely going to live there someday. So I finally made it to the East Coast when I was 18 years old. I moved to the Boston area for college. And while I was studying in the Boston area, I made many a trip to New York City. During long weekends, Thanksgiving, spring breaks, it was the place that I always wanted to travel to. And it was a short bus ride away. So during college, after finding every reason and every excuse to travel to New York during all of my breaks, I finally landed my first job out of college in, ta-da, New York City. So I graduated, packed my bags, and moved to the city that I lusted over for years, New York City. The Empire State. Since first moving to New York, I lived in multiple places, ranging from Elmhurst, Queens, to the Upper East Side, and now the Upper West Side. But I've always loved all parts of New York City because they're just so different, so diverse, so many special characteristics that just make each neighborhood really special. New York City is obviously world famous, much loved and much hated for many, many reasons. It's been through so much. From the 9/11 terrorist attacks in 2001 to the financial crisis to the multiple hurricanes and now the 2020 pandemic. At the height of the pandemic in March and April of this year, this was a tough place to be. We had sky-high rates of COVID-19, hospitals were overcrowded, medical professionals were overwhelmed, our systems were overwhelmed, and our friends and family from around the world would call, would text, would have Zoom meetings with us, voicing their concern about what the state of New York was, and it was really, really sad and hard. At the height of the pandemic, New York State was having 1,000 deaths from COVID-19 every single day. But since then, somehow, with the resilience of New Yorkers as well as some good leadership here, we've actually become what is arguably the envy of the US when it comes to COVID-19 cases and control. But the purpose of this video is not to talk about the pandemic, but rather to show how New York has evolved because of the pandemic and also because of the social and political unrest that we've been facing as a country. So I'm going to be taking you through many neighborhoods across not only Manhattan, where I am right now, but also through Queens, Brooklyn, and the Bronx, so that you can see for yourself how this city has evolved and remained resilient through this pandemic and through this year. You'll be able to notice incredible street art that has come about and has constantly been evolving. You'll be able to see the amazing dining options, indoor as well as out, that have been made possible through the pandemic. And you'll also be able to see how New Yorkers have changed the way they've interacted to adapt to the pandemic and social distancing rules. Hopefully, you'll be inspired the next time you come to New York to come back and visit these other parts that may not be super touristy, may not be tourist attractions, but you may have your interest piqued because these places are so incredible, so unique, so filled with culture and filled with love that you absolutely know that you have to see them when you come. And I'm going to tell you this story through the lens of what I know and love most, food and culture. A lot of what you may know and have seen as a tourist in New York have changed and evolved quite a bit. When you come back, you may notice that a lot of things have changed. And hopefully by the end of this video, you'll be reinvigorated to come visit New York and see exactly how it's evolved through the pandemic. And not just in Manhattan, but across Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, and be able to see exactly how strong and resilient New Yorkers truly are.
At the beginning of the pandemic, the haters definitely hated.
They criticized large, densely populated cities, particularly New York, given that the city was the epicenter of the world temporarily for positive COVID cases. People fled. People moved out. And you know what? It's totally fine that they left, because with some time and good leadership, we were able to get our rates down to the lowest in the nation and eventually became the envy of the entire country. Everyone else wanted to be us. In June, when restaurants were allowed to open for outdoor dining, the city across all boroughs fully embraced this. In Queens, the first borough where I lived when I first moved to New York, I was so happy I almost cried when I saw the spacious outdoor dining setups in Elmhurst, Sunnyside, Woodside, and Jackson Heights. Whole blocks were closed to vehicle traffic to allow for safe dining outside. Outdoor lights were strewn everywhere, dining partitions were created. Neighboring businesses even allowed restaurants to stretch out their, quote, outdoor dining space to be in front of their businesses. Everyone wanted the best for New York. And so we cooperated, made friends, and allowed businesses to continue. People outside of New York love to stereotype and generalize, saying that New Yorkers are cold and rude. But the reality is that when we see something, we definitely do say something. And we know we always have each other's backs here. In Brooklyn, restaurants not only took advantage of outdoor dining, but also encouraged and invited potential guests into their backyards and patios. No matter where you went, people adhered to masking up and social distancing rules. And every restaurant, whether it was a sit-down or a total hole in the wall for takeout only, was just so warm and friendly when we chose to dine with them. It was as though through dining with them, we were silently mutually communicating, we got you, we want you to survive. In the Bronx, once indoor dining was allowed at 25% capacity in September, restaurants took this quite seriously and really spaced out the tables. And with locally run and locally famous trucks and trailers such as Lechonera La Piranha, Bronx locals and borough-hopping delicious food seekers such as ourselves were happy to line up, while socially distanced, to eat some of these incredible local delights, such as Puerto Rican-style lechon, or whole roasted pig. And back in Manhattan, where I currently reside, the streets, while they've been quieter than pre-COVID, have been cleaner than never before. While it has been heartbreaking to see the many restaurants and businesses we previously frequented close, on the upside, new businesses and dining spots are still opening and attracting patrons.
I don't know if you can see this, but this is a spot where La Salle Dumpling used to be. And now it's been replaced by Friedman's. No more La Salle Dumpling near our apartment. La Salle Dumpling used to be our favorite Chinese spot, walking distance from our apartment. And now we no longer have access to them because they closed their location near us at 61st and West End, and they only have their uptown location now. I'm standing in front of what used to be Rice and Beans, our go-to Brazilian spot in Hell's Kitchen that is walking distance from our apartment. Now, as you can kind of see, the label for the whole name of the restaurant is still here, but it's actually been replaced with new owners and new management. So they've renamed to Malord Grill. Fortunately, regulars such as ourselves will still be able to enjoy this delicious Brazilian food from the Malord Grill, what used to be Rice and Beans, but not all situations are as fortunate as this one. A lot of delicious local eateries that are locally owned have been forced to shut down, and they're probably not going to be able to reopen in any other iteration.
Entire blocks have been closed off to allow for covered, cozy, yet safe outdoor dining. But the biggest and loudest joys were recently seen and experienced the weekend of the 7th of November, when the U.S. presidential election results were announced. This was when the true passionate spirit of the city was ignited like I'd never seen it before. Residents, young and old, came out to celebrate the end of an era and the beginning of what will hopefully be a new era of hope and progress. Plus, fingers crossed, what will be an end to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Hopefully, when you do decide to come back, you'll be able to see a new New York. A New York that has been reinvigorated, re-energized. And so that's my story for New York, my love, my adopted home. Hopefully you'll be able to come visit soon and we'll be able to see each other. And if you do come, and I hope you do, hopefully you'll learn to love New York and how it's evolved just as much as I do.